The face value of Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds will forever be known as card games on motorcycles, and I imagine anyone who played the card game without watching the anime could find that to be funny as a meme and off-putting as a premise for a card game show. But as someone who followed the series until halfway through Zexal, Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds is my favorite among the series. All of them have their ups and downs, 5Ds having that edge that was partially incorporated in GX, but I always found that edge to be charming in its own right. Some of it can be over the top and nonsensical, but the decks and archetypes to come out of them had some of my favorite designs. Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D seemed to double down on the edge and seemed to stick closely to keeping a more serious storyline in comparison to previous series. They even removed the Shadow Realm entirely for the translation and even most of the darker tones and plot of the story overseas. But of course they still had to hold back in a few areas. And sadly we never had a translation for the last season of the series, much like Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. The first season's antagonists were the Dark Signers, a counterpart to the Signers, but instead of having marks made up of the Crimson Dragon, each have their own geoglyph of a Nazca line, based off the real Nazca lines in southern Peru, and they individually represent an Earthbound Immortal in accordance to the symbol provided. Each member had died and were given the chance to live again by agreeing to becoming a Dark Signer at the time of their death, though only if they show they want to live or get revenge and appease an Earthbound Immortal. They're essentially zombies, walking among the living but not technically alive as they're still connected to the Netherworld. Though Earthbound Immortals are relevant to the story of the Dark Signers, they have enough presence to warrant a video of their own. The focus of this video will be on Dark Tuners and the Dark Synchros. The Dark Synchros were an entire mechanic introduced early on right next to the Synchro monsters we have today. However, Dark Synchros have a specific requirement to have a Dark Tuner as material. It works like Synchro summoning, but whereas a Synchro monster summon requires to add the levels together to match the level of the Synchro monster you're trying to summon, to Dark Synchro summon you must subtract the levels of the non-Dark Tuner monsters to equal the negative level of the Dark Synchro monster. For context, by subtracting the level of Infernity Dwarf with the level of Dark Tuner Nightmare Hand, you would equal level A and be able to summon 100-eyed Dragon. But the level is treated as a negative level, the level actually going down the number line beyond 0 to -8. One could say that's just subtract Synchro summoning, but you could also call Link summoning Synchro summoning, but without the tuner. Dark Synchro summoning is the opposite method of Synchro summoning, but it's different enough that it has its own layers of thought and strategy to function on a completely new level had Konami ever actually released them as Dark Synchro monsters. Other than Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's Tag Force 4 through 6 and the anime cards section on a number of dueling sites and programs, they don't exist. In place of the 7 Dark Synchros shown throughout the first season, instead they were released as regular Synchro monsters with the effects adapted varying on the monster themselves. I guess I can understand not wanting to put too much on the play of players by introducing 2 extra mechanics within the same time span of a year, but I think it's a shame that they never explored Dark Synchros or Dark Tuners. It would have been more weird to adjust to, but we always have to adapt to new mechanics as they come along, and this would have been one of the more fun ones to explore intricately. However, if they did make Dark Synchro monsters and Dark Tuner monsters into a thing, how could they have gone about it in order to properly adapt them to real life play? And thus we get into the meat of the video. We're going to look over this anime mechanic and see the cards in their originality and see how they could have been gone about to function for real life play. Let's get into it. Before we actually start going over the Dark Synchros themselves, we need to look over the rules of Dark Synchro summoning to understand what we're looking at, as well as go over a few things along the way. Subtract the level of the Dark Tuner from the non-Dark Tuner materials to Dark Synchro summon the required monster, so their base rule is similar to Synchros for the most part. However, the wiki has a specific rule for each of the Dark Tuners and Dark Synchros that we'll look over pretty quickly. For Dark Tuners, as said by the wiki, states, according to Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's Tag Force 4, Dark Tuners act as a subcategory of Tuner monsters. Any card that would affect a Tuner can affect a Dark Tuner the same way. Given that the card's type and effect text has the clear distinction of them being Dark Tuners and not Tuners, I think that having the rule be outside knowledge of its card text would be unfair. So if Dark Tuners were to be adapted, I would say that this rule should not apply. Dark Synchros have this tidbit about there only being one non-tuner and one Dark Tuner specifically, but given that regular Synchro monsters don't have this detail, I opt that it should be left out as well. And that if a Dark Synchro monster would require specific materials for its summon, like Synchro monsters, it should be listed in its card text, not be an outside ruling. However, the Dark Tuner's level must be higher than the combined level of the non-Dark Tuner materials. I do want to talk about the negative level aspect. How would this affect other cards? Well, even though their level is left aligned on the card instead of right like XYZs, XYZs have a rank system instead of level, so different effects apply to them, like being unaffected by gravity bind since they don't have a level. Links have no level to speak of, so effects regarding level don't apply to them, like defense-related effects. However, my thoughts are this. It is a negative level, and despite being on the lower spectrum going past 0, that still makes them level nonetheless. I think there should be some important facets to this. 1. Applying level increase/reduction. For example, let's look at Star Changer. Let's say that you target 100-eye dragon with the effect to decrease its level by 1. Decreasing the negative level would change the negative level 8 to negative level 9, since going down the negative number line would have the number itself actually go higher, so to speak. So any reduction level effect would increase it. Increasing the level by 1 would change it from negative level 8 to negative level 7. 2. Level cap. You can make the negative level of a Dark Synchro monster from negative 8 all the way to negative 69, provided you have the level change effects to do it. However, much like how a monster with a regular level cannot go anywhere below 1, a Dark Synchro monster's level cannot go up past negative 1, meaning you can't change the Dark Synchro to a positive number just as you can't turn a positive level monster into a negative level. The only way for a monster to have a negative level is if it's a Dark Synchro monster. 3. Doubling negative levels. Simple. An effect that would double a level 5 monster would make it level 10, since it can go higher. Doubling the negative level would just reduce it to negative 1. Let's finally get into the cards. Going in order of Dark Tuner's and Dark Synchro's appearance in the anime, we're first going to go over Dark Tuner Catastrogue and Frozen Fitzgerald. Dark Tuner Catastrogue is a Dark level 8 Fiend Dark Tuner effect monster with 0 attack and 0 defense, and when this card is used for a Synchro summon, destroy one card your opponent controls. Frozen Fitzgerald is a negative level 5 Water Fiend Dark Synchro effect monster with 2500 attack and defense, and requires one non-tuner and one Dark Tuner. In order to special summon this card, subtract the level of a Dark Tuner monster from the level of one other monster you control. The value must equal the level of this card. Now this is listed on every Dark Synchro monster as we go along, so at this point I'm going to stop reading this line of text. If this card attacks, your opponent cannot activate any spell or trap cards until the end of the damage step. When this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard while you control no other monsters, you can special summon this card in face-up defense position. At the end of each battle phase, destroy all monsters that attack this card. I don't know how to make great borders for cards, so I hope you like inverted colors. Personally, I think it's cool. Taste aside, this card was used by Grady, named Dick Pitt in the sub, this is totally important to know, a one-off character who wasn't a Dark Signer, but one of the two people who were hypnotized by Roman Goodwin's weird Udu abilities and used him to duel Yusei. He played an odd water deck, which changed while under control of Goodwin. To provide context of how it was summoned, he revived a petite anime monster called Blizzard Lizard with Call the Haunted, used Ice Mirror to summon a second Blizzard Lizard, used a second copy of Ice Mirror to summon a third copy of Blizzard Lizard, then proceed to tribute the two monsters to summon. You get the picture. The Dark Synchro's effect is almost the exact same as the Synchro we have now, but it doesn't have that last line of text. Catastrogue is okay. The popping effect is nice, but can be a hassle to summon, especially when it's a Dark Synchro whose effect is only good if it's the only monster on the board and you have cards to pitch. However, card effects stop this thing right in its tracks. So, this is the way I would like to go about the changes. I present you Catastrogue and Netherworld Servant Frozen Fitzgerald. Retain the same stats as Catastrogue the original, but with a change of just being Catastrogue and a minus tuner instead of a Dark Tuner. The effect now lists if a level 3 or lower monster is special summoned from the GY, you can special summon this card from your hand. If summoned this way, this turn, this card cannot be tributed. It can only be used as Dark Synchro material for a Dark Synchro summon. If this card is used for a Dark Synchro summon, you can destroy one card in the field. Netherworld Servant Frozen Fitzgerald maintains the same stats as before, but with additional effects on top of disabling back row when attacking. If this card is destroyed by battle, or an opponent's monster effect, you can discard one card to special summon this card from your graveyard in face-up defense position. And if you do, send that opponent's monster to the graveyard at the end of the battle phase. You can only use this effect of Netherworld Servant Frozen Fitzgerald once per turn. They are thematically the same, with some little darkness energy in all of them in the card art, but in the Synchron archetype, do you see Tuner in the name of every Tuner monster? That would be ridiculous. I wouldn't want to segregate the means to summon an entire mechanic into one archetype unless I plan to make an archetype with that support along with the generic lineup. And since the point of properly adapting a mechanic would mean to let it have a variety of uses for a variety of archetypes, theme or otherwise, calling them all Dark Tuners would be odd for archetypes that wish to use the concept later on, so I opted to go by the manga title, minus Tuners. But I thought to keep the title Dark Synchros the same, and the argument of why they should be a minus tuner and not Dark Synchros can apply here, but hear me out. You know how in the second part of Zexal the whole rank up magic thing came up and how they would make people evil duelists for a hot minute while they have either a number monster or CXYZ, but there were good guys who could still use the rank up magic spells depending on the rank up? Think of the number C/CXYZ as the Dark Synchros and the minus tuners as rank up magic spell cards. The Dark/Chaos bit can be evil if used to do so, and the rank up magic spell/minus tuner alignment would be dependent on its use just the same. I thought that maybe the same could apply here, where the Dark Synchro is adapted and expanded upon. That all being said, all the minus tuners need easier summoning conditions, but I plan to keep the effects relevant to the context of their use. Thus Catastro's specification of needing a monster to be special summoned to be able to summon itself. Pop effect there because pop effect is good. The Netherworld Serpent bit isn't there to make them an archetypal cluster, but because the idea is for the Dark Synchros and their regular Synchros to coexist, since this is meant for a hypothetical physical release. These cards can't have the same name. So Netherworld Serpent is a reference to the anime, as well as a way to make legacy support out of the Dark Synchros. I made the pitch effect an immediate reaction regardless of your monster count, while keeping the anime effect of getting rid of monsters right away, but at the cost of making it a hard once per turn. But you can use this to crash into problem monsters and pitch a card to get rid of it. Going on to the next pair of monsters, we have Dark Tuner Chaos Rogue and Dark Diviner. Dark Tuner Chaos Rogue shares the same stats as Dark Tuner Catastrophe Rogue, but with an effect that instead says, if this card is used for a Synchro Summon, send the top 5 cards of your opponent's deck to the graveyard. Dark Diviner is a Dark Negative Level 4 Fiend Dark Synchro effect monster with 2000 attack and 1000 defense, and this card cannot be destroyed by battle. If this card attacks an opponent's monster that has greater attack than this card, send one card from the top of your opponent's deck to the graveyard for each multiple of 100 and the difference between this card's attack, then that monster's attack becomes equal to this card's attack until the end of the battle phase. These were both used by Tetsu Trudge, a high school bully and then cop, was the second to be under the control of Roman, and in this instance had his deck replaced with the Wormmill deck, and faced off against Jack Atlas, who used Carly to duel for him because card games on motorcycles will lead you into more accidents than you think. For the context of Dark Diviner's summon, Regretful Rebirth was used to revive Shield Worm, mill that shit, which followed on the next turn to use Worm Bait and tribute the tokens to summon Chaos Rogue. As intimidating as Dark Diviner truly is in card art, after watching his scene in the anime, it's hard to take someone serious when they're too busy trying to comprehend East and West simultaneously. Again, Chaos Rogue suffers from the same problem as Catastrophe Rogue for no built-in summoning condition, and unless you have a faster way to summon Dark Diviner with it, the mill won't do much by itself. But Dark Diviner isn't actually that bad considering. You'd have to build a deck around milling out your opponent's deck to get this thing's best intentional use, but that 100 attack reduction times mill could go a long way. Especially with the Kaiju engine. Summon Dark Diviner, mill 5 Chaos Rogue, attack a GZ Kiru you distributed forward on your opponent's side of the field, mill 13, total 18. Unless your opponent is playing Fairy Tail Snow or just Burning Abyss, they're not going to have the best of times. Regular Dark Diviner is too slow for his mill effect to matter, so presenting these. Chaos Rogue and Netherworld Serpent Dark Diviner. You can special summon this card from your hand by attributing 2 monsters with 0 attack and or defense. If this card is used for a Dark Synchro summon, you can send the top 5 cards of your opponent's deck to the graveyard. And if 3 or more monsters were sent by this effect, you can target 1 monster in either player's graveyard, special summon it to your opponent's side of the field, but its attack becomes 0 and its effects are negated. Requires 1 non-minus tuner and 1 Chaos Rogue. Cannot be destroyed by battle. Once per turn, if this card declares an attacker is attacked, if the attack of the battling monster is higher than this card's, you can have this card gain attack equal to the attack of that battling monster. These changes last until the end of the battle phase. If this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, your opponent sends cards from the top of their deck to the graveyard for each multiple of 300 battle damage this card inflicted to your opponent. Chaos Rogue's Tribute Summon ability is admittedly specific, but this is technically Wormmill support. Tribute Wormbait, Scapegoat, or Fires of Doomsday tokens to summon this guy while still maintaining a normal summon. The extra effect added after the mill is just meant to work with Dark Diviner better. Netherworld Serpent Dark Diviner's effect is kind of meant to be a middle ground between the original Dark Synchro and the Synchro we have today, but the effect instead being reliant to activate by doing damage with a monster. Up to being 300 because 100 would have been way too much milling power in the card. The 300 also came from how the Synchro mills 3 from your opponent. Not exactly the best as a mostly generic Dark Synchro, but hopefully would have its place somewhere. Next up we have Dark Tuner Nightmare Hand and 100-Eyed Dragon. Dark Tuner Nightmare Hand is a level 10 warrior Dark Tuner effect monster. Attack 0, defense 0. When this card is normal summoned, you can special summon 1 level 2 or lower dark monster from your hand or graveyard. 100-Eyed Dragon is a dark negative level 8 dragon dark synchro effect monster with 3000 attack and 2500 defense, and this card gains the effects of all dark monsters in your graveyard. When this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, select 1 card from your deck and add it to your hand. Used by Callan against Yusei, the first shown Dark Secret to be used by an actual Dark Signer. Callan also summoned the first revealed Earthbound Immortal, but saving that for a later time. Nightmare Hand is the worst out of all Dark Tuners, actually requiring a normal summon attributing 2 monsters to actually have its effect go off. Even if you're able to potentially summon a monster you tribute it with, this card is still terrible. You could cherry pick all you want about the good in this card, but the only good feature is its level as a Dark Tuner. 100-Eyed Dragon is the whole goddamn cherry tree and probably the best anime monster in all of anime cards. Copying every dark monster effect in your graveyard is just not okay. Adding any card from the deck to your hand if your opponent is able to get over this thing essentially makes this thing immortal, since you can just add any revival card to bring this thing back, rinse and repeat. I'm going to drop a link in the description for a recently retired Yugi tuber JCD Godot, or going to retire after completing a certain series. The video explores the more anime possibilities and combos you can make with this thing, but it'll give you a good idea of what it could do, even if this thing were applied to real life at face value, because all it takes is a Gale Dogma and Grave Dump effects to make something nasty. But if this as a Dark Synchro and a minus tuner were adapted to real life play, perhaps it could be went about like this. If this card is normal summoned, you can special summon one level 2 or lower dark monster from your deck or graveyard. That monster, and monsters with the same name, has their effects negated on the field and in the graveyard until the end phase. One or more non-minus tuner dark monsters, and one dark minus tuner monster. This card's name is treated as 100-Eyed Dragon while on the field. During your opponent's main phase 1, you can target one dark monster in your graveyard. This card's name in this effect becomes the targeted monsters until the end of the next turn. If this card is destroyed, you can special summon one other monster with the same name this card had on the field from your extra deck or graveyard. Nightmare Hand's effect still only goes off on the normal summon, but it's far easier to go about, even with a restriction. And it's easier to get the non-minus tuner material immediately on the normal summon, making it a 1-card negative level 8 monster. The effects of the level 2 or lower monsters negated in the most important places because fuck those shenanigans. 100-Eyed Dragon is, again, trying to meet the middle ground to a degree, getting rid of the level restriction from the Synchro, but keeping it to one dark monster. Made it into an opponent's specific quick effect out of concern for any immediate utility for unfair combos. However, in place of a search for an Earthbound Immortal, or literally anything, I thought a floating effect would be cool. Get proper setup to whatever dark monster, maybe set something to pop it, get a monster for free, as long as it gets destroyed first. Admittedly, this would be more of a risk-taking card if it were released as a physical copy, so this would be a stretch if it were to go this far as a retrain. Treat it as a Synchro counterpart on the field so it doesn't flow into another copy of itself, if that means anything. Next up, we have Dark Tuner Spire Cocoon and Underground Arachnid. Dark Tuner Spire Cocoon is a level 5 Dark Insect Dark Tuner 0 attack 0 defense monster, and if your opponent controls a monster and you control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. Underground Arachnid is a Earth negative level 6 Insect Dark Synchro effect monster with 2400 attack and 1200 defense, and disables back row when attacking. Once per turn, you can select one monster your opponent controls and equip it to this card. If this card will be destroyed, you can send the equipped monster to this card to the graveyard instead. Used by Roman Goodwin in a Spider deck, unsurprisingly, in a duel with Yusei, using Dark Tuner Spider Cocoon's ability to summon itself, then normal summoning level 1 Dark Spider and using its level increasing effect on Spider Cocoon to make it a level 7, Roman Dark tuned them together for Underground Arachnid. Dem titties. There's really not much to say here. Spider Cocoon is a legitimately good tuner with a simple and easy summoning condition, and Underground Arachnid is pretty much the same as the Synchro we have today, except it's not limited to one monster at a time. The adaptions I have in mind could easily be considered unnecessary, but if they were released as minus tuner and retrain, they need a little more meat on the bone. So I present these. The Spider Cocoon is exactly the same, but with an additional effect that says a Dark Synchro monster that uses this card as Dark Synchro material cannot be targeted by card effects. Netherworld Servant Underground Arachnid still disables back row when attacking. You can target one monster in your opponent's graveyard, equip it to this card. Your opponent's monsters with the same name as cards equipped by this effect cannot activate their effects nor target this card for attacks. You can only use this effect of Netherworld Servant Underground Arachnid once per turn. If this card be destroyed, destroy one card equipped to this instead. Spider Cocoon has the same special summoning method in it, but added the targeting protection because in the current state of the game, it would let the Dark Tuner hang on the field a little bit longer. As said, the Synchro and Dark Synchro does the same thing, so to change things up, I made it a bit relevant to the current game. Instead of relying on your opponent's monster on board to use her effect, you can target a monster in the graveyard instead, and potentially lock them out of playmakers. It'd probably be too slow to stop hand traps, but with the protection on targeting and destruction, it'd be annoying to get over. Here we have Dark Tuner Dark Ape and Zeman the Ape King. Dark Tuner Dark Ape is a level 2 Dark Beast Dark Tuner effect monster with 0 attack and 0 defense, and when this card is used for a Synchro summon and sent to the graveyard, you can draw one card. Zeman the Ape King is a negative level 7 Earth Beast Dark Synchro effect monster with 2500 attack and 1800 defense, and disables back row when attacking. When an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can send one monster from your hand or side the field to the graveyard to negate that attack. Used by Devok in a duel against Luna and Leo when Luna was forced to fuck off in another world, Devok used Dark Matter, a card will go over later, on Ape Magician and used Dark Ape to tune them together into Zeman. A little confusing, but I'll explain later. Dark Ape doesn't have a means to summon itself besides the normal summon, but that draw one can certainly help enough to call it good. For the Dark Synchro, unlike Underground Arachnid, there really is no difference at all between Zeman Synchro and Dark Synchro, so I'll simply move on to the adaptions. Dark Ape is a level 9 monster this time around instead, and if you control a beast type monster except Dark Ape, you can special summon this card from your hand. If this card is used for a Dark Synchro summon, draw 1 card. Zeman the Ape King requires 1 or more non-minus tuner beast type monsters and 1 minus tuner, and disables back row. When a monster declares an attack, you can send 1 monster from your hand or your side of the field to the GY. Negate that attack, and if the sent monster was a beast type monster, draw 2 cards. You can only use this effect of Netherworld Servant Zeman the Ape King once per turn. The minus tuner / Dark Synchro setup is all about beast types as a whole, so the additional effects are just meant to be supporting for that specifically. Keeping that in mind, Dark Ape as a minus tuner has a summoning condition for beasts, as well as being a level 9 to match the minus tuner needing to be a higher level ruling. Zeman's effect is the same, but again supports beasts with a +1 if an attack is declared and negated from either player, and of course once per turn to prevent a +1 to being a potential +6. Next up is Dark Tuner Doom Submarine and Dark Flattop. Doom Submarine is a Dark level 9 machine type Dark Tuner monster with 0 attack and 300 defense this time around, and once per duel if this card is in your graveyard and you control no monsters, you can special summon it in face of attack position. Dark Flattop is a negative level 8 Dark Machine Dark Synchro effect monster with 0 attack and 3000 defense, and once per turn you can special summon 1 Flying Fortress Skyfire from your graveyard ignoring the summoning conditions. Used by Greiger in a duel against Crow not too long after Greiger turned Dark Signer, Doom Submarine was discarded by the effect of his iconic Flying Fortress Skyfire, and after having his board cleared by Crow, he uses Doom Submarine's effect to summon itself, then normal summons Dark Sea Rescue to synchro summon Dark Flattop, drawing 2 in the process. Doom Submarine, the only Dark Tuner to have a stat that's not 0, requires a turn of setup to actually summon it and use his effect, but it's not bad by any means. Being a granite once per duel kind of hurts, but it's definitely understandable. It could be a machine duplication target and allow some rank 9 plays, most notable being King Calamities. Dark Flattop is reactor support and there's nothing else to say about it except that I could use a tune-up. Doom Submarine in this case would state if this card is in your graveyard you control no monsters, you can special summon this card. And to summon this way, you can special summon 1 level 5 or lower Dark Machine type monster from your hand or deck, but its level becomes 1 as effects are negated. You can only use this effect of Doom Submarine once per turn. Can only be used as material for a Dark Synchro summon for a machine type Dark Synchro. Netherworld Servant Dark Flattop requires 1 or more non-minus tuner monsters and 1 minus tuner, and if this card is Dark Synchro summon, you can special summon 1 level 8 machine type monster that cannot be normal summoned or set from your hand, deck, or graveyard, ignoring the summoning conditions. You can only use this effect of Netherworld Servant Dark Flattop once per turn. If this card leaves the field, you can add 1 Dark Machine type monster from your deck to your hand. Doom Submarine still has the same requirements to summon itself, but can be faster with making an extra deck play, though it's meant to be catered to reactors with this effect. Got rid of the per duel restriction in place of a once per turn restriction, and had limited it to being specific to Dark Machines to keep it from being splashable, mostly out of concern for any kind of unfair plays overall. Dark Flattop's effect is actually reminiscent of Attack Force version of itself, being able to summon the level 8 machines in general from provided areas, ignoring summoning conditions, but I would like to limit it to only those that cannot be normal summoned. Other than Skyfire, this card can summon 6 other monsters, so the only one I feel important enough to note would be Orbital Hydralander. Its searchability would definitely have far more range in what it could be used to play, extend, or set up. After your search, if they clear your board, you can just do it all over again with Dark Flattop, assuming you run more than 1. Also, Dark Flattop the Synchro has a specific ruling that says, Flying Fortress Skyfire that was sent to the graveyard from your hand or deck cannot be special summoned by the effect of Dark Flattop. This is a stupid ruling and thus does not apply to Netherworld Servant Dark Flattop. That's dumb. And lastly for the monsters, we have Dark Tuner Dark Goddess Wataka, a fucking mouthful, and Moon Dragon Quillow. Wataka is a level 3 Dark Spellcaster Dark Tuner effect monster with 0 attack and 0 defense, and says you can pay 1000 life points to special summon this card from your hand. You can have this face-up card's level become equal to the level of 1 Synchro monster on the field. And the Moon Dragon Quillow is a negative level 6 Dark Dragon Dark Synchro effect monster with 2500 attack and 2000 defense, and says when Sun Dragon Inti you control is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, special summon this card from your graveyard. When this card you control is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, special summon 1 Sun Dragon Inti from your graveyard. During your end phase, destroy this card. A roided out Rex Goodwin performed a 4-card combo in a 4-way duel by using Oracle of the Sun's effect to summon itself Cyber Dragon style, then normal summon Fire Ant Ancestor to synchro summon Sun Dragon Inti. This is important to note as Rex proceed to use Weeping Idol's effect to banish Fire Ant to summon it and pay 1000 life points to summon the goddesses whose name's a mouthful. Use her effect to copy Sun Dragon's level, then proceed to Dark Synchro summon Moon Dragon Quillow. Wataka as a standalone Dark Tuner takes the gold medal for Dark Tuners for having the easiest summoning condition of simply paying life points. And the second effect would be required for you to play a Coast Synchro / Dark Synchro deck to take full utility of it, but in the context of the Inca deck, it's the perfect dark tuner, though it was obviously written that way. Taking the anime version of Sun Dragon Inti into account when talking about Moon Dragon Quillow the Dark Synchro is a fun little combo, certainly nothing groundbreaking or meta-shattering. One of the problems is that despite Sun Dragon Inti's burn damage, the monster pop could be useful in a theoretical sense, but you have to take the same amount of damage inflicted to you with battle in order to get that legwork put in, and the amount of damage you would take probably wouldn't be worth it in the long run. Moon Dragon Quillow is just a combo piece to keep doing damage, but since it's not once per turn, you can make an infinite shield until you're ready to make a play or attack with the 3k beater. But with the real version of Sun Dragon Inti being different from the anime version, as well as Moon Dragon Quillow to a degree, Dark Synchro differences aside, my thoughts on how Quillow as a Dark Synchro could be adapted as well as Wataka would be this. Dark Goddess Wataka says you can special summon this card from your hand by paying 1000 LP. You can only special summon Dark Goddess Wataka once per turn this way. This card can only be used as Dark Synchro material. If a Synchro monster is placed upon the field, once per turn, you can make this card's level become equal to that monster, and add one level 2 Dark monster from your deck to your hand. Netherworld Servant Moon Dragon Quillow says this card's name is treated as Moon Dragon Quillow while on the field or in the graveyard. Once during that player's turn while this card is in your GY, you can target one Sun Dragon Inti you control. Its attack becomes 0 and you take no battle damage with battles involving it. This effect lasts until the end phase of the turn. At the end of the damage step, if this card battles a monster, you gain LP equal to half that opponent's monster's attack. If this card is destroyed, special summon one Sun Dragon Inti from your graveyard. Sonic Edition for Wataka is the same, but with restriction where restriction should be, and a search ability if a Synchro exists on the board. But the idea for Inca is to search Weeping Idol instead of hoping to have it in your starting hand. So Wataka is the same as before, but with the Consistency Edition. Netherworld Servant Moon Dragon Quillow has the name effect to keep Sun Dragon Inti live in grave as well as the field, as well as make Inti capable for doing its full anime effect, minus having to take the damage, so you probably won't have to kill yourself in the process of trying to use burn tactics as Inca's kinda plan to do. Life point gain remains to be faithful to the Moon Dragon Quillow we currently have. Inti's effect keeps the Dark Synchro balance to stay as a once per turn clause. I would probably still play a copy of Supe in the actual Synchro just to keep things in theme, because why not? Supe may be slow, but he does help the deck, as long as you load up on board wipe, and with Torrential Tribute being a thing, I could see that being the case. Going quickly over the spell and trap lineup, both used by Devok, we have Dark Wave and Dark Matter. A normal spell and a normal trap card. Dark Wave says, multiply by -1 the level of one monster you control. And Dark Matter says, activate only when a Dark Synchro monster you control is destroyed. Draw 2 cards and set them in defense position in your monster card zones. The context of Dark Wave. Earlier when I mentioned Dark Ape and Ape Fighter being used for a Dark Synchro summon, realistically that should have equaled up to positive level 3, not negative level 7. At most, if they really wanted it to be a Dark Synchro monster, negative level 3. But Dark Wave's effect had turned Ape Fire into a negative level monster. -5 minus -2 equals -7. But I've already said my piece on how rulings with negative levels should work, so the adaptation for I feel should be this. Simply add one Dark Minus tuner from your deck to your hand. You can only activate Dark Wave once per turn. A simple search card, since in this case there would only be 7 minus tuners, and in the case of the hypothetical release of more minus non-tuners, it would still cater to Dark monsters specifically, but of course it's with the original minus tuners in mind. It could easily get knocked down a legal number of copies per deck to potentially none at all, but the idea is to give the concept of Dark Synchros and minus tuners a good head start. So if this would get hit later down the line, so be it. Dark Matter is worse magical hats. Activate only if a Dark Synchro monster is destroyed. Draw 2 cards, and if the drawn cards are monsters, you can reveal them. Special summon them in face-down defense position. During your main phase, you can banish this card from your graveyard, except the turn it was sent there to activate its effect. Special summon one Dark Synchro monster from your graveyard, but its effects are negated until the end of this turn. You can only use each effect of Dark Matter once per turn. Traps aren't usually favored in Synchro build. I imagine it wouldn't be that different from Dark Synchros, but being a +1 and Reborn card in one would see some abuse, I think. Maybe even more so in the Inca deck given its looping destructive nature. And depending on what you're possibly able to summon with it, set up place for the following turn, or have quick meat shields if things are going south. And there you have it. Some closing thoughts? Again, I guess I can understand why they wouldn't make them, but it just doesn't make complete sense to me. They could have been worried about releasing a mechanic whose sole background and purpose is to be backed up by the story's antagonist, evil character I guess. Yet in Zexal, as they were making the whole number monsters thing, in the very next series, they introduced the mentioned before number C/CXYZs, an entire lineup of monsters used by either the bad guys of the current arc, or people that they brainwash into doing their bidding, as well as changing the brainwashed individual's deck to varying degrees to use this new fangled evil type of monster to fight with. Does that sound familiar? I once read, can't remember if it was a comment or an actual interview quote, that Konami didn't release them because they thought it would have been too complicated, but they released Slink monsters who themselves aren't too hard to pick up on, but they had to change the ruling of the game itself to suit them, and now we have to take column placement into account when playing. which in itself can be more complicated to learn how to work with, especially in heavily combo-oriented decks. I don't know, I just personally feel it's a missed opportunity. We'll always have fan-made cards. Thanks for watching. Would you play these cards? Is there anything that you think is too much and or too little? If Konami had adapted this mechanic, with the effects and rulings provided, what decks would you try them in? Leave a comment and tell me what you think. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe, as for the next video we'll be talking about the Earthbound Immortals, as well as some of their specific anime support cards, and then we'll move on to the Dark Signers. Ladies and gentlemen, dudes and dudettes, this was your boy Beta, and I wish you good whatever time it is. Thank you, and see you in the next one.